My name is Onyenso. I'm the founder of Equiform, which is a youth civic-led civic storytelling and creative engagement platform in Canada. And my work is really just rooted in the belief that young people's lived experiences carry civic weight. Through Ecoform, I've been able to successfully create spaces where youth can use storytelling, arts, research to explore issues that are shaping their communities, from climate justice all the way to belonging, health equity. It's been really wonderful to get folks engaged in a way that they're able to translate their learnings into creative expression. And this for me is really shaped by my personal experiences as well, moving from different communities. I grew up in Nigeria, I moved to Canada, and I really just believe that access matters, belonging matters, and young people are constantly making decisions where they can thrive, where they feel seen, and where they can imagine a future. And I am hopeful that my work with Ecoform gives them that space to do so. Thank you so much for inviting me to the panel, and I look forward to the discussion.
So, young people are often invited to consultations and conversations, but that does not always translate to influence. What needs to change to ensure youth are not simply heard, but actually have the power to shape policies, programs, and decisions that affect their futures?
Thank you so much, Obi. And to start off, I would say that we need to challenge what we mean when we say we want young people to be heard, because that tends to seem like it's more than enough. Young people, they're invited into consultations and panels, roundtables all the time, especially as like more and more, I feel like these spaces are realizing the need to have young people's voices and get them heard. But we tend to be asked for our opinions and not necessarily given any real power to then shape the outcome. So the question is also like my response to the question is also what happens once young people are inside these rooms, and what power do we want to be giving them as well. My experience over the years, I've come to learn that truthfully, participation without power can become performative, and that's when we start entering the realm of like tokenism. I would say if we want real youth leadership, there have to be some uncomfortable things institutions have to be willing to do. Like first off, they need to share the information, all of it. They have to share resources. They have to compensate young people for their expertise and give people, young people specifically, meaningful decision making roles. And most importantly, they also have to be willing to be okay with learning things from young people that they might not necessarily agree with and still take it seriously as well. Young people don't always necessarily show up to these spaces as the most perfectly polished leaders, and that is no excuse to whether or not they should have those spaces at these rooms or not. There needs to be that realization that part of giving young people these spaces is also building them up while they're in these spaces. So are we building institutions that allow for more young people to develop their potential? Are we creating pathways for someone that doesn't maybe have the right connections or background or confidence to still become a young leader? So it's not that the issue was never that young people don't have ideas. I believe that we do. It's also that we haven't built enough pathways for those ideas to translate into real decisions. One thing I want to leave with this answer to just close it off is that if young people disappeared from the process tomorrow, would the decision actually change? And if the answer is no, then perhaps we haven't given them influence, we've only given them a microphone. So that is my answer to this question. I feel like it's a very thought provoking question.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Thanks, Anrika. That was very good. Yeah. So really, we have to be open to young people's ideas, right? And two, like you said, they may not look the part immediately, but we should look to put in time and effort and finance into building them up to look like the part that we want them to take up, right? So that's really cool. We shouldn't just write them off because you think they're not looking the way they should be looking, right? Thank you. Through EcoForm, you are connecting lived experience, data, public dialogue. How can youth use their personal and community stories to influence systems and advance solutions to issues such as poverty, inequality, climate change?
Thank you so much, OB. So I believe stories are really important because they give a very deeply personal way to things that are structurally important. We tend to separate maybe like lived experience, data, and policy as though they are three completely different worlds, but I don't think they should be. Data can tell us that a problem exists. Policy can tell us what institutions about, sorry, what institutions are doing about it, and then we have lived experience, which is also a form of qualitative data, which can tell us what the problem actually means for the person that is navigating the system. And that's a big part of what motivated me to create Ecoform, because I see civic storytelling as more than simply giving someone a platform to tell their story. It's about creating processes where young people can take that experience, examine them, connect them to broader evidence, and then ask what those experiences tell us about the systems around us. For example, if one young person tells me that they can't find meaningful employment, that shouldn't be where the conversation should stop. I'm going to be like asking or dissecting the problem from, okay, what does their education look like? Do they have access to the right networks? Are there maybe financial barriers? Do they have transportation? Are there biases in the hiring process that they might be exposed to? Or maybe they need digital skills as well, or do they even know where the opportunities that they could possibly tap into like exist? So there's just so many ways to like look into it from just a simple question of, okay, they can't find meaningful employment. And that's why I think storytelling is particularly important for young people, because we aren't just future leaders, we're experiencing the consequences of past decisions and decisions that are still being made today. We're experiencing like climate change, and we're the changing, navigating the labor markets as well, trying to find jobs after like graduating from university. We're also in this era of like the world has moved into the digital spaces and AI, and there's so much as well that we're navigating, from like housing and affordability to identity. And so our experiences are evidence of what is happening in society right now. And I do think as well, with the whole idea of like civic storytelling holding weight, that I'm not trying to just romanticize storytelling, because there also has to be like a what's next. Like telling marginalized people to keep sharing their pain without changing the conditions is not empowerment. So I am about like amplifying these stories, but also trying to also connect it to, okay, now that these stories are out there, how do we change the system and change the structure that already exists?
Thanks, Enrica. That was very good. So, from what you said, storytelling is being able to tell your story and make the connections that influence action, basically, right? So it's not, and that's where the skill set Chinazo had mentioned, communication, being able to communicate, effectively will help you tell great stories. Digital platforms can give young people access to education, employment, entrepreneurship, and civic participation, but it can also reinforce existing inequalities. What needs to happen to ensure digital economy creates opportunities for marginalized youth rather than widening the existing gap?
Thank you so much, Obi. And to answer that first part, I completely agree. Like digital platforms, they have connected the world in a way that I don't think we could have ever envisioned like years ago. Like this is the world is a digital village. We're in that era where it is that you can learn from anywhere in the world. You build communities across borders, you can create businesses online, find mentors, and so much more. But we also do have to acknowledge that the fact is that the digital world is an extension of like our everyday reality. So anything that exists, like inequities that exist on a day to day in, would I say, the fiscal world, actually can scale just that, maybe even more in the digital world. So I think shared prosperity has to mean asking like who's benefiting from the growth, who has the opportunity to participate in these digital spaces, who is being left out. Because when we also think about the extension to the digital world, we are also seeing like inequities that are being transferred over as well, and digital inclusion or disinclusion as well. Some people don't have the digital literacy to even understand the opportunities that are available to them. Maybe people from like global south countries, for example, may not have financial resources to take advantage of these opportunities, or they're dealing with maybe accessibility barriers like internet connection, or maybe they're participating in online spaces where there's discrimination or misinformation or algorithmic bias. So there is so much that comes into play when we think about like these digital spaces. They are so great in one side of things, but then you also have to make sure that you are taking into account the inequities that very much exist and are very much real. I think when we think about the digital world in general, digital economy, we need to make sure that we're connecting youth to digital skills. So, like financial literacy. We've talked about skills with like communication, for example, very important one. Mentorship, and that cuts across like intergenerational mentorship as well. Career development skills, civic education skills as well. And I would say we also need to make sure that we are trying to involve these marginalized young people when we're designing these technologies and policies that will affect them. I don't want like young people to only be trained to use whatever technology someone else creates. I want young people to be researchers and policymakers and designers of these systems that they are very much a part of, regardless of whether they are choosing to be a part of it or not. It's something that just exists and has become a status quo to the world that we're in today. And I think there
Thank
is also a very important connection here to like climate action and poverty reduction. For example, if a young person is struggling financially, they may have less capacity to participate in like climate action. And if communities don't have equitable access to technology and information, then they may have less ability to participate in decisions around their environment. So a young person isn't just like a climate youth or a digital youth. They are living at an intersection of all of these different systems. And I think we should take that into account and also make sure that we're giving young people enough power to shape like these systems and the future of the world that they live in. And they should also
you.
have an opportunity to
Yeah,
try and improve these systems as well.
thank
Thank
you. Yeah, thanks, Anrika. That's really great. You said like everything you said is it's really impactful, creating digital systems that work for marginalized youth as well, right? And not just, um making it put him at a disadvantage just position.